Testing? Okay, there we go. Cool. So, welcome, welcome. Just setting up for the moment. mm Enjoy the background. A little meditative for those interested in the meditative mentality. It's actually from a music video. It's one of my favorite little, mm, whatchamacallums, scenes, if you will. So, as I set up here, we're going to continue from yesterday. Going into details on, well, basically setting up our workbench, right? We spoke about having a place to essentially work on test code as a workbench. Now, most languages, like maybe Python, you know, um, you'll use like a folder as your workbench. If you have something like a WordPress, which we can do WordPress in the future too. That's something I've been kind of wanting to. So I'm trying to get my facial mustache hair out of the way because it went in my mouth. So let me kind of twist this MF right here. All right, decent. Get out of my mouth, please. It's when you eat food too. It sucks. The great things and the bad things about having an epic mustache. Um, I didn't even think I could do it. I just let it out and then it decided to do the thing. And I was like, nice. I do have like this special mustache wax. Let me let me groom myself on stream real quick. Hold on. For anyone watching, I'm sorry. For anyone not here, you're probably lucky. Hold up. I'm just gonna guide this sucker off to the side. Anyway, this is a huge setup. It's a visual setup and it's also a streaming setup. So I gotta check on some chat spaces. I'm gonna reply mostly on YouTube specifically. At least in chat, I'm gonna be on chat in YouTube. I'm not going. I'll reply to Twitch and Kick, but I'll probably reply in stream. So keeping that in mind, if you want to chat, you want to get like links or details that I'm gonna throw up, make sure to join on the YouTube channel. Otherwise. Hold up, one more side, one more mustache side. The mustache is not good. It's not good enough. Get out of my face. Get out of my mouth area. All right, cool. All right, so going back to the workbench. Let me adjust some scenes here. Oh, I also have a nice little chat space. If you like the reminiscence of AIM, please do send a message to the AIM box. If you know what AOL Instant Messenger is, you're one of my people. You grew up in the same, probably best timeline of this century, this dimension. Mm, so that's fun. Although sometimes my chats tend to kind of, is it organized right? Let me check. Oh no, hold on. Wait, chat aim chat. Huh? Mm, I think I have to remove. Sometimes OBS tends to mess with the details. I have to reset up the little chat box, I think. Chat aim, chat aim, chat aim. Come on. I just added the chat aim and now it's gone. Great. Chat aim. Oh, hello. So if anyone ever plays with OBS, pretty cool little software. You're able to essentially, and as a programmer, this is actually the biggest key. You can create your own pages, right? Or you can grab pages from an existing live service. And like what I'm going to do now, I'm going to grab the general copy current address of my multi-chat stream. I'm going to add it to my little OBS web window here. So now I get to stream out chat with some adjustments here. Probably want to make it the size of the window, about 450, I think by 600, I think dimensions were. Changing width, changing little details, moving it over. I love OBS, great for streaming. So if you're in the world of streaming, this is, I mean, the more programming you have under your belt, the more powerful your interactivity, the more you can make your custom environment. How about that? I'm gonna do this. I need to cut off some of this. Filter out with a crop. So I'm gonna crop pad the top about 50 and the bottom about 50. And then I'm gonna add a little transparency with the Luma key, Luma, Luma key. That's what it's called. Minimum, I think that's about right there. All right, so now we can see the background and the properties, the actual cropping is all right, but the width, 350. Now you can't really see the box because it is transparent, but I assure you, it is within the bounds of the chat, AOL chat space. Oh gosh, hold on. All right. I think I'm basically 95% set. Give me a second here to. Okay, so that's that scene. Going down back to our. Now I got to figure out which was the next scene I liked. There we go. All right, cool. Awesome tasticals. All right, so we're gonna go back to the workbench created. So here's a couple of things I like to manage with, and actually I didn't set this up yet, but here's kind of a key. If you use Visual Studio Code, and potentially you just have a ton of different work environments, code spaces. I like to use the workspace. I think what's called workspace, workbench, workspace, more focused view. Let me see what the other one was. It's like a plugin basically, right? Project dashboard. Project dashboard. Great little plugin where you can, I had to reinstall a lot of this stuff, so at least you can see me set up, which is pretty cool. The project dashboard is great. No projects have been added. Now, Visual Studio Code is a little interesting because the way you set it up is actually mostly through these sort of like text-based interactions. So if you're used to terminals and command prompt, it's pretty straightforward. Here, I'm going to click, enter a group name. So I'm going to do stream. I'm going to click on a folder project. I'll go to my tutoring folder, my stream folder, and now essentially, oh yeah, and then I gotta add the name. So keep an eye on this little window that pops up here. And then I can give it a color of red for YouTube. Now, I can do this a bunch of times, right? So a new group here, this would be my general workbench because I have a folder full of just code, right? This is on a different drive. Here, code add here, and this is going to be my general space. So if I click on that, now you can go into that general space of, in my case, all my code. So I have in here R, Python, JavaScript, Lua, Java, HTML, PHP. I have a bunch of projects in here for each one of these, right? So very good to essentially work out a nice little organized set, but we're going to be focusing on the stream space, which basically is just one folder, right? Right now we're just creating the workbench for our um, basic playthroughs and testing out some code. Chat's still good. Okay, so it's still visible. Yeah. And also make sure if you want to ask any questions as we go, please do. It will take me a moment to sometimes take a look at chat because I can get hyper focused on current processes. So keep that in mind. All right. Oh, let me get my little dude to say something else other than rough. There we go. Probably give him a bit of a higher time value. All right. So let's kind of recap what we went through yesterday. We didn't go through too much crazy stuff. In fact, let me set up my tablet here for our visual whiteboard representation. Cables, cables everywhere. Cable, you should see my desk. My God, it's not even a desk, it's a table that's like a meter and a half by a meter, and including a TV that's sharing the space of everything. It's a lot of cables. Cable. Can't even put my arm down without pressing on a cable somewhere. So it should work now. Let me check. Oh, right. Oh, I gotta log in. Right. So there we go. Tablet's working. The main screen is working. Uh, mm, yeah, a little bit of a thing there. Can't do that. All right. All right. Let's go back to where we were here. My Discord drop. That does pop up once in a while, but it's basically for two cases. If you're a gamer, you want to drop in, play games, that's the main one. I have another Discord specifically for students, which is something that only students get when they register with me on Patreon. But the main Discord that pops up once in a while, it's gonna pop up with stream elements, throwing it in there. So keep an eye out. Oh, and I think I do have, wait, do I have an actual, let me check. Yeah, there you go. You can also do it that way as well. So that's for gaming, for trading too. I like to communicate with a lot of people. So in the case, ooh, someone wants to actually play Peak. I haven't played that in a bit, or I haven't even played that once yet. That's something I want to try out. Come again? Your Discord? Nah, that's fine. No, thank you. Look, I'm gonna see, this is kind of why I want to turn off Twitch chat, because you're not the only person in here trying to get a request. I've talked to people like you, Vanessa, that have wanted to be Discord buddies and then they're trying to sell me something. So if you're gonna try and do that, that's not, I'm not gonna be adding you at all. Will not send you a request. This happens literally on a daily basis every time I stream. And I recommend no one do communicate with anyone sharing, openly sharing, especially, I mean, if you're not a streamer actively giving out your face to the world and you're just a random person on the internet giving out their Discord. Like, if you want to interact, go for it. Talk to me. Let's ask some questions. Let's go for some details. But if you're just going to be here spamming out your or soliciting your own Discord credentials. Not a fan of that. I've talked to people like you. All you do is you try to sell people things. Uh, it's, commendable. Everyone's gonna make a living, but I'm not going to be adding anyone anymore through any other Discord formats. Plus, there's a lot of issues with people trying to hack people's Discords and trying to get personal information. And it's 2025. I mean, you got to relax with considering that you're going to get anything out of a Discord chat anymore. Um, you have to really figure out a new way to solicit people. Anyway, what did we do yesterday? We went through a kind of hardcore concept of variables. Now, and we did compare it to mathematics, right? So we got to consider the mindset of what a variable is in math, and then drop it into the other case scenario of how do we use it in programming. I think I'll take an hour stream because a friend of mine wants to play Peak, and I kind of really want to play that. And I'm gonna stream that too. So if you want to watch Peak after this session, go for it. It's like a multiplayer mountain climbing game. It's pretty cool. But I'm gonna stream for about an hour, hour and a half, and then go to do that. So mathematics. Variable contains information, data, and a computer program is all about data. You want to pass information back and forth. Here's the perfect idea of a variable here. We can always generalize this to what a variable can be in a very like tutorial-like process, right? So I can say var int or of number integer equals to 5, right? Um, we can do 0.5, 5.5 for decimal values. Now, here's the kicker. The way we, especially in JavaScript, because it's such a fluid language, you don't have to directly request a specific type of data, because there's a lot. There's strings, there's booleans, there's integers, there's doubles, there's floats. You don't normally see those data types in JavaScript. It's really going to determine the type of data that the variable is going to be created as, and it's going to essentially work as a type of adapter. Oh, you're giving me a five, like a regular five, it's going to be a regular integer. Oh, you do a negative five, still a regular integer. You're going to do a 5.5. Okay, now we're doing more of a double, right? A float type um, variable. So the key here is that JavaScript just uses one type of variable declaration, var. You can also do let for let something be something. That's another format for it. There's a kind of global and local scope to these types of declarations, which will go in the future. But for now, we're just going to use var as a typical, I want to create a variable and kind of really connect it to the mathematics of the whole concept, right? So variable, num integer, 5.5. Now, if I wanted to create this as a string rather than, a typical integer, for instance, maybe like an IP address, like 127.0.0.1, we don't want to treat this as a we don't want to treat this as a type of actual number, numerical value where we're adding, subtracting, dividing, or whatever, right? We actually want to treat this as a IP address. You would most likely use it as a quote, a type of string. You put quotes around it. You've got a couple of different types of quotes. You got single quotes, double quotes. And I think in PHP you have the slanted one, the tilde. But I think, actually, let me see. Let's say we want to put a tilde with an port number. Yeah, okay. So normally when you do sort of networking, in your typical socket space, you're connecting, especially in Minecraft. If you know Minecraft, you know how you connect to different servers. There's an IP address in the front, and then there's your socket or your port at the end, which normally is separated by a colon 5555. Now, when we're dealing with strings, plus is not going to add these numbers together. Plus is going to glue strings together, right? So it's going to put them together into one bigger string. But this is basically an example of all the different quotes we can work with. So you got single quotes, put my single quotes in colon. You've got double quotes around the IP, and then the tilde for the port number. Now, generally speaking, you don't want to mix these very often. You want to kind of have a type of um, what's the word? Like a consistency, right? You want to have a consistency. Oh, hold on, I'm doing that thing again. So you want to do a consistency. There it is. I forgot to switch. No one's telling me to switch. You guys are watching, not telling me to switch. And you, Vanessa, still trying to get a Discord drop. No thanks. What's your Discord drop? I'm not giving my Discord to you. Those are for my students that are registered on my Patreon. So I'm sorry, but you're not going to get anything. Um, so looking at this factor, right? This is what I was talking about without actually showing you on screen. But this is really where we're looking on our different value types. So again, double quotes, single quotes, and tilde. Tilde is a little slanted quote thing. Again, plus here is just the glue between two things to make it one. Plus here, plus here. Together, it's basically going to make a single string, which normally is going to maintain this sort of single string value, 127.0.0.1, 55555, right? This is basically what it's going to convert to, one big string. But this gives us the ability to do a little bit more flexibility. For instance, if maybe it's not always the port number that we want here, or maybe we want to, this is where the key of variables comes in handy. We want a dynamic value. Maybe you want to scan, and you're not going to scan ports with JavaScript. Keep that in mind. This would be something for Python. This is where you would use sockets in Python, which we'll go over in the future when we do more networking based stuff. But for today, we're really working on the idea of variables going into the functions that we started working with last time. So if I wanted to make this a lot more dynamic and changeable, I would not use a built-in, a hard-coded 55555 in quotes. What I would do is I would say port num, and I can give it a value, right? And I would remove this. I'm just going to put this at the end here as a reminder. And I would put the variable value port num, right? So now anywhere between the declaration of what port num is and this section here, we can do something special. We can create a loop that doesn't just go through the 5555. We can change the variable over and over and over and over and over and go through every single possible port, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 5,000, 6,000, whatever, 50,000. The key of how variables are dynamically changeable is why we do use them in the first place. Currently, the IP address, and keep in mind this 127.0.0.1 is just a local callback address. It doesn't even leave your computer. It just kind of, it's like when a computer says I. When I say I can literally replace every sentence with 127.0.0.1. I can say, or 127.0.0.1 can say that 127.0.0.1 is 6 foot tall and 127.0.0.1 likes pizza. It's literally saying I, right? The computer itself is talking about its own existence. So it doesn't leave the computer, but in the case of like trying to figure out something like maybe uh, it's really not going to do much, right? Notice that there's no way in hell you can have a 1 millisecond ping about anything. A 1 millisecond ping is it's not realistic, right? Even less than one. What that means is it doesn't even leave your computer space. It doesn't go on a network. It doesn't go to your Wi-Fi. It just kind of like really quickly loops inside. It's almost like thinking. You can think much quicker than you can speak. Sometimes when I think too fast and I speak gibberish, please do catch me on that factor. But the key idea here is this particular variable is, or not variable, this string is holding this I value of a computer identifier of me, I, the computer currently sitting in front of me. And it's not going to change, so we can always do IP number, and we can basically give that its own variable as well. And we can change that futuristically. And we can just adapt that string to IP val. But in the end, we're not really building anything here because JavaScript is not the language you'll be using this information for. You will use certain types of, you won't be really doing the 127.0.0.1. Although if you're hosting a server, this was one of my kind of particular case scenarios. I can create a Python server later that listens on a certain port, and then I can use the fetch in JavaScript to connect to that port. And then we can have like a Python communicate with my JavaScript. So then we can have a connected interaction between two languages. This is how that works. Either with JSON created data points that they can both read, or with a live program that listens on a certain port. So this, even though it's nice to kind of see, is going to be for the future, not for now. What we're going to do now is take a look at still, because we're still kind of building our way there. We're going to be using, we're taking a look at this case scenario for our workbench. All right, so this is what it looks like. Nothing crazy, but that's kind of the idea, right? There's two mechanics to any programming language. There's the interface and there's the mechanics. We'll kind of focus on interface, GUI, stuff like that. But because I'm using our handy dandy JavaScript and HTML as our front end, we don't have to go too crazy into the mechanics of graphical user interfaces. All they are, in reality, is an input box here, right? This input box. And then we've got the button right here, right? And then we connect that button to that function we saw earlier. Now, I don't like the order. It's already pissing me off. Normally, I like my order later down the road. So there's going to be a way for us to kind of delay certain types of code from running. Um, Let me see what it was. I don't want to use jQuery onload, document onload, right? Is that the case? Onload my scripts, function, onload, object, onload, document.onload. Okay, so we should be able to use some case scenario of going back to order of operation. Mathematics, we have left to right. Programming, we have top to bottom. So when we're thinking about that top to bottom, line 1 runs first, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I have a button click function, right, and I'm trying to connect it to the actual button itself, the order of this case actually matters. Now, it is a little interesting. So let's check that again. If I place the button click underneath, okay, so this time it worked out. There was an issue last time. So let me do yes again. You typed yes. Okay, that's fine. All right. So we are calling our function. I like better to have my main kind of structure GUI-wise on top, and then the code connecting to that GUI underneath. So this is kind of my preferred way. I'll get rid of this script. There was an odd order of operation issue last time, but I had to swap the location of the function itself. So, okay, functions. This is how functions can help us out. When we're using a function, we're basically condensing, because we can technically put whatever code in JavaScript in this quoted space on the onClick activator, which basically just means, hey, button click, what do you want to do? I want to run the function called button click. But we can also just put the code in here, but that's going to get messy. So functions help us organize, not single line. Like imagine having to fit all of this in this space. It would be absolute chaos and it would be horrid. So this is why we use functions specifically to essentially organize the way we structure our code. I'm going to remove some of these comments actually, put them at the end, just to get them out of the way. There we go. So this is all we've done so far. We've created this sort of structure. We've given ourselves a type of particular test. If I type in the word yes, I'm going to give myself an alert called yes. And then anything else that happens, or if I type in no, if I type in gibberish, we've got this other case that runs. But keep in mind, this only runs separately. Here's something that's interesting though. If I change this and I say if uh, user in does not equal to yes, right? So this is a logical structure. At this moment in time, I've separated these two technically chained logical checkers. When we use else, it's a specific way for us to say, hey, run this, or if it's not true in the case of the condition, run the else bracket, the else code block. However, sometimes you may need multiple checks on the same case value, right? So you would separate and not use else because now we have two separate if statements and they can actually run simultaneously if the case arises. So in this case, still going to have the same effect though, at least for us. Let me save this because we have a logical, you typed yes, you typed anything else. It's a yes with an extra S, right? And it's very direct. So let's test this out too. If I do, did I just copy that? No, okay. If I do yes with a capital Y, what do you think is going to happen? Right? Capitals, do they make a difference in programming? Case sensitive case? Yeah, it does. You type anything else. So we always got to make sure case sensitive type are not going to be affected. So how do I grab both of these? There's a couple of ways. The easiest way is to force all strings to be lowercase, which there is always a function in every single, um, I think it's just the string that we have here. To lower? No, it's not going to be it. Two lowercase string, two lowercase. Yeah. Yeah. It should be the case here. So two lowercase. There's a built-in function. Now, the nice thing about JavaScript is that it kind of has some great tools already involved. I still typed yes. When I changed my user input from a capital Y to a lowercase y, now I've forced the condition to be true on the case that I'm checking to make sure that it's matching the type of expected value. The expected value is a yes with a lowercase. But because users can type in whatever they, oh, look at that. This is a great case for this too. I typed in yes with uppercase, and it does satisfy the not yes because it's not uppercase, right? It's not the exact same copy. It is a uppercase Y. So this is also firing up. This is actually a great example. It's a great example of how maybe we might have certain multiple conditions take part. But if I wanted to adjust this, then of course I'm just going to take my to lowercase, attach it to the string. Now the to lowercase method, remember, got to think about the correct terminology when it comes to object-oriented programming. It's a function. I like calling it a function because that is what it is. It acts like a function, but it exists only inside of certain data types and a user, in this case, a string. Only strings can have two lower and two upper, but those are built in what we call prototypes in JavaScript, a set of functions that exist on specific data types. So having this now saving, refreshing, we're not going to get both of them to activate. What is this though? Why do we have to make sure that we do specific case matching and all this stuff? Because we're human and you have to, as a programmer, expect any input possible. Now, I haven't done numbers yet in any other extra value cases, but these are the type of filtering, what we call um, validation checks, right? We do some validation checks based on the data. If we're doing email inputs, put your email here to get a specific, um, to join our newsletter or whatever, then you would have to make sure that in the string that the user types, there's an @ sign. So there's a function to search for specific symbols and a .com or .net or whatever. Those are the types of validation checks we have to do based on what that input specifically is trying to input. So we got to predict a little bit. We have to say, what is the user going to be using this input box for, and how do we validate the actual information? So in this case, I'm just validating to make sure that any case sensitive situation is lowercase so I can match my alert, my condition. But that's it. So there's a lot of validation checks. That's for a whole video and a whole stream on its own, from telephone numbers, from email, from IP addresses. A key situation for IP addresses is that the maximum IP address is 255.255.255.255. Those are the values, which you won't even have as a maximum. There's a lot of segmentation that happens between certain IP types, like 192.168.1, that might be familiar for a lot of you. And then dot number, this is for local case scenarios, like on a local network at your home. You may have 192, you may have 10.10.0 dot number or any subdomain of those cases. So there's a lot of validation checks to have to go into play when we're dealing with IP addresses. But on the general sense, we're going to we're going to start giving this a type of command. So the first thing I always like to do is in my control panel is to give myself the ability to Google stuff, search things online. So my plan, my mental prototype is to put a command type function. So I'm going to say, if I want to Google something, I'm going to type G greater than. That's it. G greater than. With the G greater than, I will activate certain case values or certain activation points, which means that I want to Google. So what if the case is I want to YouTube? I will put YT. Maybe I want to go to Yahoo, whoever uses that anymore. I'll put a Y. So those are kind of the predicted expectations of what I want to customize my actual if statements as. So I'll start with kind of like, all right, let's say G, right? We're going to do G, and this is activating Google now. So we're adjusting a particular case scenario. Symbols match. Good. But that's not going to do anything else. I don't even need this secondary part here. What we need to do now is consider that, all right, as I type something into Google, I'm going to have basically, it's going to be a huge set of string manipulation here. We're going to go into um, typing in some sort of space separated sentence. So space is the key. So I don't know, cute cats, whatever. Now we have to expect how to parse this. we have to first identify what we are using or what we're trying to grab as our key indicator of the command, meaning G. And then we have to consider everything after is a part of that command function, aka if I'm Googling, these are the sets of values that I want to Google. Let me kind of zoom into this. So in order for me to basically figure this out, I have to find a pattern in this set of values. The big pattern, spaces. Human readable language always includes spaces. So we have to split or separate, partition inputs in a specific way. So for now, I'm going to start using console log because I hate alerts. There's my user in. And alerts only give us strings, so they kind of are very limited. So G cute cats, what does that look like? Right click inspect to take a look. I always like to orientate this on the bottom of my window. Console. There it is. G cute cats. All right, great. Now I want to split, which I forget between everything. I think in Python it's split, but JavaScript split string. Let's see. Yeah, it's just dot split. So now I want to take a look at what it looks like to split this particular string, but I want to make sure I have a indicating value of the split. Here is where we're going into functionception, function inside of a function inside of a function. Well, remember composite functions we were talking about before? This is where we start observing that factor. Oh, hold up. My whiteboard is loading. Good for a coffee moment. Ah. Okay, come on. It's not blank. Ah, okay. We're just zoomed in real good. Quite a zoom. Holy zoom. All right. Oh, wait. No, this is heart of algebra. The other thing. Okay, right here. A function inside of a function. Composite functions. This is how they work, at least figuratively. Hello, or halo, hlo, hello, hello, Kinchu, welcome in. So, composite functions in mathematics tend to play a direct role in how we actually program. It's the same idea, right? Let's take a look at that concept. Let's say I take, and this is where we have to name things differently because when we have and y equal to basically the same variable, it kind of gets hard to track which equation, which function we're trying to talk about. So how about I rename this one f of x? I'm going to rename this one g of x. This is why we use these sort of function notations. And then let's call this p of x. All right? H-low? H-low. Yeah, bro. I guess that's hello. I don't know. I don't know. So when we're doing composite functions, let's say in the factor of g of f of x, that's what we're trying to basically consider. First, we consider what's the outside function. It's g. And f of x is being plugged in. What's f of x? It is this, right? So we would say, all right, for every time I see an x in my g, since the g is kind of like the holder, the container, the main container, we're going to be plugging in this one value. And remember, plugging in attributes or anything in the input space gets replicated to every location available based on the fact that our input of the general is x. X is considered our inputs. So we don't need the top one because we're really talking about the outside g function. G considers x to be the input. So wherever I see x, I replace it with whatever is inside of parenthesis, aka the function f of x. So, yeah, mathematics, composites, you're thinking of the essentials of mathematical logic. You're not going to be applying this in the same difficulty level in programming. It's going to be a lot more fluid and logical, or, well, not logical, but it's going to be a lot more simplified. Understanding the complexities of what a function is, where it its inputs are and how its outputs affect the rest of your kind of structure. Here's kind of the key, right? So I can plug values inside of this, but then I got to plug them also inside of these. What would that look like? Let's say I just keep things general. So it's going to look like, I'm kind of squeezing in, but let's go ahead and say this is this is what it's going to transform into. First, we can consider this as g of mx plus b, because that's the first step. What is f of x? It is indeed the function mx plus b, a linear equation. But then we expand on the fact that, hey, we're not just using the g as a holder. We're going to consider ax squared plus bx plus c. Now, notice I haven't really talked about this p function, which is fine. I'm going to move that over here. We're not going to talk about it really. But I've changed g to represent what its containing equation is. Everything that represents the g function. And I've replaced x with parentheses because the expectation is I'm plugging in for x, therefore I don't need x, I need the representation of what x is, and x is represented by mx, it's a little thick, hold on, mx plus b. So if you didn't understand composite functions before, at least now it should kind of make sense because you're using the outside function as the container of what your final equation should look like and x as the factor that you're plugging in. So there it is. That's the idea. Those are the arrows that we saw over here being plugged in on the right side from one point to another. And we're seeing that same structure here where we're plugging this mx plus b into each of those factors. Cool. That's as far as I'm going to go with composite functions. That's as much as you need to know. Whatever is inside parenthesis is what's going to be put inside of the function. Problem is, it can be pretty difficult function. So we don't need to know this far of a complex situation for us to use functions in programming. So again, you don't have to be a mathematician to really be a programmer, but understanding inputs and outputs is a very kind of algebraic form of logic. Because when we think, we have to define ideas, and when we don't understand one word and we're trying to use that word in a sentence, we kind of have to like look back and define what we're trying to explain. If we don't understand a word, then we're not going to be able to explain ourselves. So, kind of like the structure of that, we want to understand how a word functions, plug that into the next sentence, and then plug that into the next overall idea. It's just logical structure that we're focused on. And that's what happens right here. I was just about to start. Hey, welcome in. That's cool. Yeah, we're focusing JS, but we'll be going through a lot of stuff. I know PHP, which if for in the future, we can definitely do some server programming as well. Python, JavaScript is kind of my main language when it comes to quick tools. In fact, for the fact that you're looking around, everything here is JavaScript. That little guy dancing over there is JavaScript. The background is JavaScript. It's basically OBS with my little applications that I created using JavaScript. So as far as like interactability, I love JavaScript because it's really quick, simple. And the fact is OBS, let me kind of make this window bigger. OBS uses like a browser function where you can create your own applications in HTML and attach them to your kind of like canvas. And this is my canvas. Like I have another one. This one. What's up? And you got chat over there, right? A little AIM messaging space. You got this one where I'm just kind of talking about stuff in my little meditation background. So yeah, no, it's a tool. A lot of people are like, "Oh, I don't want to be a programmer. Why are we gonna have to be programmers in the future?" Well, it really depends. Are you gonna do it for yourself, or are you gonna work in a company that's gonna require you to basically manage data, right? If you know the tool, you can be in medicine, you can be a mechanic, you can be in all kinds of different server spaces, and if you attach programming to your knowledge, whatever you work in, you can make it much more efficient. So the case scenario is anyone can benefit from programming. That's just it. It just depends on how you can create something within your respective profession to basically benefit from that program you need. whether it's managing your employees or whatever, right? So, where was I? Yeah, right there. Hold on. Which one was it? Oh, that's very similar. I'm gonna put this up here, organize my little scenes a bit. Great. Okay, cool. Anyway, so case in point, anyone can benefit from programming, and it's worthwhile at least getting the basics. And we basically work with the basics here. We're not gonna go too crazy deep into like APIs. I mean, since you're here new and you potentially just entering JavaScript, maybe take a look at this idea. I like to always show this as a general sense. Any language you start with has two pieces to it. I should probably separate these two pieces. Oh yeah, it's already separated. You've got the 15%. This is the 15% right here in this box. And then you've got the 85%. If you understand the first 15% of any language, which is basically what we're doing here, and repetitively going through if statements, while loops, functions, which we'll get into more detail, which we have now with composites. Um, we can do when we do objects and classes. This is essentially the main key. If you master these first 15%, variables, functions, logic control, looping, and objects in one language, that's directly translatable to a secondary language. JavaScript actually works very similar to Java. Well, not works, sorry, looks visually. JavaScript and Java look very similar. They have a similar format. Um, Python, different, completely different. Tabs and colons and all these kind of things, but Python looks very similar to Lua. There are kind of like two main structures in the world. There's, do you like curly braces or do you like tabs? And once you kind of see the difference between the two, a lot of languages really fit with it, one of those two bounds. You either like curly braces and you use them like we do, right here, curly braces to separate blocks of code, or you're a Python developer and you don't necessarily like curly braces, but you prefer tabs. Now, the real case scenario is tabs make things more, well, organized. So I like both personally. So there's no real particular preference for me. All right. So outside of composite functions, let's take a look at that again. This is what's happening in this space. I'm using two functions. This one is the method. Okay, let's call it method. First master the first 15%. This is basically where you're going to be doing all of those like creating loops, solving like if you do leet code, doing all of those puzzles, practice on the logical puzzle solving skills to really master these tools. Then after you're done with the 15%, like I showed you earlier, you're a game dev, and that's actually, well, we didn't go into the 85%, or I didn't go into it detail wise, but you're going to be right here. You're going to be in the game dev space. So I kind of went over this yesterday, but let's go over it again. When you're done with the first 15%, which now you can understand different types of programming languages just by looking at the code, and of course, understanding curly braces and tab-based programming, you have a choice now to focus on your case, game dev. You're probably not, well, yeah, you could use JavaScript as a game dev. You can do that. In fact, here's a case. You can use 3JS. Was it 3J? 3DJS. There's a couple of packages, yeah. 3DJS to basically create that programming factor of it. I do have some example programs in my tutoring space, which I'll show you in a little bit. But the key idea to remember is quickly learn the 15% because it's not much. It's not a lot. How you doing, Mary? Good to see you here. Mm, How much you want to bet Twitch is going to try and sell me something on Discord again? All right. So when you want to basically work with a game dev based focus, first 15%, then the 10-year case. We did this mathematically, right? So how long will it take to you for you to master your dev ambitions, game developing ambitions? But keep in mind, you want to make a multiplayer game? That's a different story. You need to know networking. It's easier to do in JavaScript, but you may potentially still be able to squeeze in using like online based connections um through the Chrome browser. Because again, JavaScript. Okay, cool. Thanks, Mary. If you're here to chill and ask questions about programming, super down. But if you're, yeah, you get the idea. I just get it so much at this point. I'm expecting Twitch to just be those types. Um, what was I saying? All right. You can use JavaScript to create games, which we'll show you in a little bit. But in the end, let's kind of observe this. If you want to professionalize in a specific case scenario, game dev, data analyst, web developer, apps that are generally local, right? You can do web apps too, so you can kind of say web here if you would like. I use a lot of JavaScript to create web apps. No, I play a couple of things. Probably gonna play Leap later with a friend of mine. I wanted to try that out. Oh, cool. I'm glad you like this, bro. Like and subscribe. Chill with me more often. You'll find some random cool nuggets of information. Appreciate. So, you want to be a game dev, so you're not going to learn data analyst stuff. That's a whole different branch. Think of like math, right? Someone that learns calculus or trigonometry or statistics, what do they all have in common? Algebra. So, a game dev and a data analyst and a web dev, what do they all have in common? The first 15%. Variables, functions, logic control, looping, and objects. That's it. Understand how to use those. You can basically also expand it. But then the real power comes in that next step of I want to be a game dev or I want to be an apps or web developer or whatever. That's when you start to focus on, well, there's so many options. What are you going to do? Where are you going to expand to? Are you going to use Unity? Are you going to use a specific, if you use Unity, I think it's C sharp. Unreal is C++. plus plus. So then you kind of have to adjust your programming language um, diversity. But if you're going to do JavaScript, we'll go here, hold on. Let me finish this thought first because I'm all over the place. I get this sort of hyper-focused ADHD all over the place. Let me finish this. There's a 10-year factor, right? To be professional in something, it takes about 10 years. This is actually what we did yesterday, right? So, no, right here. Not 10 years, sorry. 10,000 hours. Well, I don't know why I put 10 years there. So if you want to be professional in something, there's the 10,000 hour rule. If you use this or do this thing, thanks. I hope so. I mean, I've seen teachers in school, so they're not that interesting. I've had my own little conversations about teachers that are boring. Um, 10,000 hours, practice anything. Programming, you want to be a lumberjack, you want to play pool really good, billiards, you want to swim really good, whatever. 10,000 hours. So we break that down into a calculator. How long does that take? If you take 10,000 hours, divide by the multiplication of 24 hours per 365 days, and this is the key, you can be a professional in it for 1.15 years. Think about that. But you're probably dead by the first month because that excludes everything else you have to do, right? You're like 24/7 on this indulgement to grow yourself to be a developer. So this case scenario, that's not very realistic. So then we divide it by 0.15. 0.15 is just saying, hey, only 15% of my time is going to be dedicated to this endeavor, to programming, because you still have to sleep, you still have to eat, you still have to work, you still have to pay bills, all the regular things in life you have to do. So you can't just grind for 10,000 hours straight, you're going to die. That would mean you don't even stand up off the computer, which is that's a little bit too much, right? So it'll take maybe potentially 7.6 years. Realistically, you can bump it up if you do 20% of your time. If you remove friends and you go into your cave of education and reading books and practicing programming, you can probably bump it up to about 40%. But you still got to sleep and you still got to work in some form or format. So you can reduce that to about 5 years, right? This is kind of where college comes in and takes up a lot of our time, but it does gives us some of that experience. So if you want to be professional in something, 10,000 hours is the key. Averages 5 to 10 years, depending on how much time you give it or you dedicate yourself to it. And it doesn't matter what it is. In this case, developing, right? All right. So let me show you how games work within the JavaScript environment. So I got a set of games here for a lot of my students that I teach. JavaScript, Python, Lua, PHP, all this jazz. But we'll do JavaScript, some starter, and then the games down in the later. Hmm, basics, right? So there's case four. All right, we're running in JavaScript. We've got our super basic, right? I'm not gonna go into like, well, there is a case also for this 3D shooter that's a little bit more complex. It's only, look at that, 200.32 megabytes, right? Uh, but what does that look like as far as the code? Oh, hold on. This is a different one. I think I broke this one somehow. Oh, it was a node based, right? Basic. There it is. Oh, where's the ball? The ball's invisible. Game over. Let me see. How do we open this in code? We look at it here. There we go. Ball radius. So here's kind of the details that come into play. First, JavaScript has a canvas. This canvas gives you disappearing ball. Yeah, I got to figure out which we want to fix it right now, because the ball's invisible. So probably my color matches the background or something. The canvas is where we draw. There's also a case for a three. What was that thing? Canvas 2.0 JavaScript 2, 3D. What was that? There was like this really cool, because we're really entering an interesting era in the current world. No, it's not this. Where we're starting to use 3JS library, maybe. That's just basically a three-dimensional version. So you can create JavaScript-based 3D stuff on here. English, please. Junie? So we're loading currently. We're loading all the resources. We want to make the world exciting, happy. This is all based in three-dimensional stuff in JavaScript, right? So look at the mouse, look at the moving. Websites can be made three-dimensional, yada yada. Okay. Look at that thing. It's all in JavaScript. What does it look? What the heck? Whoa, it's a rocket? That's nice. That's cool. So that's intense. This is basically using that 85%. This is called 3JS, 3DJS, sorry. How do we know? We go into the head of the document. We take a look at the particular imports, right? So, Japanese, 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 looking for script, script. Oh, right there. No? G tag. No, G tag is for like Google tagging. Oh, meta name properties. Unless this is some sort of like frame. If it's a frame, then it's gonna have its own content. Mm, okay, let's search. Yo, buddy. Where are we at? Banner from Google. That's a TS, 3D, 3JS, 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 3DJS. Basically, here's what it is. I can't find it in here. Oh, it's 3. It's spelled out dir. It's 3.js. There we go. Okay, cool. So Canvas data engine 3.js, that's basically just a file. It's a file you download. You can import it to any project. Currently, using only a two-dimensional canvas for that Brick Breaker game, right? But to expand our capabilities, we would use this API, which we've kind of defined already in the 85%, right? You have to go into a library that you have to be a professional in 10,000 hours of use. So this is where it branches off from the 15%. The 15% is knowing how to use the logic we just went over, variables, functions, all that jazz. Then you branch off into a specialty. 3.js is one of those specialties. It's a dude. I want to find where there's only one mention of it, huh? So is this? So here's another source. Here's another script. I'm gonna right click, reveal in sources pane. There it is. They just didn't name it 3J. The file is not named 3.js. This is just script.js. So they obfuscated the file. Normally it's called 3.js, but there it is. This is Canon version 0.62 description of a lightweight 3D engine written in JavaScript. So in here, if I control find, Yeah, there we go. So we've got a bunch of mentions of the three color management, three dot color, three dot color, image utilities, all kinds of stuff. So this is technically this API. It's not going to be readable, and you're most likely not going to be scrolling down because look at this little scroll. I'm scrolling very, very heavily, and you're seeing all these kind of equations. You're probably not going to be doing this to try and figure it out. So how do you learn 3JS? You go into the documentation, 3.js, docs, and bam. This is where you learn how to use this or expand your 10,000 hours of professionalism. You go through a documented space and practice the use of those particular tools. But apart from that, yeah, that's how you kind of work into the 85%. If you are a developer in the case of data analyst or anything further, you would you would look into data analytical equations and how to use and import JSON, CSVs, Excel files, Google Cloud spreadsheets, a lot of things you can do essentially to expand in that direction, which would be a different placement. But let me check where this ball is. Let's see, ball radius 10. Oh, is the image of the ball not there? All right, so how do we fix this? Let me see. Reveal image. I do have the ball. Is it a PNG? Image.ball? PNG? Okay, so where's the call? If I have the image connected to that ball, but it's not visible, I will control find where my function is being called. Here, the draw location. Draw brick, draw ball, draw paddle, draw score, draw lives. Fine. So that means maybe I need to use slash to activate it. Not necessarily. All right. How about this is just directory management. Interesting. So what if I do get the ball, a PNG, move it to the local directory, and then just call it this way. So something's wrong with the image draw. Wait, maybe it's the order. Yeah, wait. Well, what are you doing up here? Is that the ball? That's the ball, technically. So something changed. Anyway, I'm not going to be here troubleshooting this particularly. I need to figure it out eventually, though. Maybe clean it up a bit. It's one of the starting points. I probably will give it a color or something about image dot color. Console clone RGB X new image. So this one comes from image. Draw image. I think it's a canvas value here. So new image class. Wonder if I have that. Maybe that's the issue. I'm calling an image from something that doesn't exist. Wait, hold on. Console. Take a look at that. Not an issue. It is loading it up here, so maybe now it's not attaching it to the ball. Nice. Uh, oh, fill style. Let's potentially do fill style. Let's see, ball dot fill style. Yeah. Let's do a color of RGB. Let's do like a gray or something. 999. No, it's still not gonna work out. Not yet. So something's up with my ball being connected. It's just invisible. Case in point. Weird. Weird. Anyway, I have to go into more detail to figure out why it's not drawing the image. At one point, I remember it did, and sometimes the problem is based on browser. I'm in Brave now, so maybe if I load it up in a different browser, it'll work. But why are you doing? This, my problem is it's right here. This is supposed to be the ball. It's just hanging up here, but the actual motion. And then there's a case for like hitboxes. Where's the hitbox? Is the hitbox moving with the ball? Is the ball just in the corner, not moving with where the hitboxes are being calculated? So there's a lot of factors. There's a draw ball function, draw the paddles. These are just rectangles. It's a function that exists in the CTX canvas. But the overall is if you're going to be a game developer, you're kind of working with, at least starting with, your understanding of a canvas. And that canvas in JavaScript is just a specialized area, kind of like the button, the button was specialized in our equation. Oh, hold on. So this button and this input are specialized values right here. Input and button. These are tags, right? Tags within HTML. And then we expand to Canvas, and Canvas is actually basically replacing Flash and when we used to do Java and all these like other basic values and try to create interactivity and animations on the screen. Canvas is super nice. It's super nice. I do know that, hold on. There was a more advanced 3D canvas. It wasn't 3.js, 3D canvas, Canvas IO. Get started, no. God, I always save it somewhere and then I forget where I save it. It's like this, it's basically like a Blender, Canvas 3D. It's something like that. It's like a Blender on a web page. No. Maybe. I don't know. I can't remember. I have to look it up and go into detail it in the future when I do actual like animations. 3D texture canvas, JavaScript. Da-da-da, 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 render 2D, 3D, web geeks, geeks forum, Kiwi, DS, no, developer, ZZ, ZDog. There's a lot of interesting um APIs. It's just based on, I mean, if you want to be successful in a particular case, that's fine. Let me see this. CodePen is great. I love CodePen. I love going to look at people's code here. That's cool. So how did that work? Function point 3D, create a point location, XYZ, three-dimensional, so the Z points, Z dimensions. And then you can take this apart mathematically and try and figure out how each triangle is connected to each point one another. And each triangle has a particular, there it is, the faces being connected together. 0, points 0, 1, and 2. Face 1, 0, 2, and 3. Well, what happens when I change one of these for funsies? Like 2? Stops. I probably messed up one of those. All right, see, look, this one's kind of gone now, I think. Is it that one? What if I do all of them too? This is how you play around with stuff and learn what's gonna happen. So I'm gonna do the two, the two, the two, the two, the two. I want to break it. Basically, there we go. There we go. Now we're starting to break it. So 2 is a particular vertice, and now I'm connecting each one of these random points to that 2. So I'm guessing 2 is probably like right here. This yellow, orange, purple connection is 2. And if I keep doing that, that's how you test code out. Oh, hello. Okay, there we go. Now I'm seeing where's the connection point. Yeah, it still looks like it's right there. Right here at this point, somewhere around here. So now we're identifying where 2 is. All right. This is just kind of playing with three-dimensional figures and working on a three-dimensional plane. That's it. So Canvas is fun, but yeah, there was a really nice 3D JavaScript interface. Ah, but I can't find it again. CodePen? No, that's not gonna be it. Anyway, back to the details, right? I think I'm probably gonna end it soon, but let's kind of finish up our little input. Our goal, back to our goal. We're trying to create an input that reads our code or reads our command and applies that code or applies that command to what we want it to do. So far, we're identifying G, but now it's not going to identify G anymore. So we got to put the alert out. Let's make sure the alert is being run. If I do just G by itself, it'll activate. Uh, Oh wait, no space. There it is. Activating Google. But if I wanted to essentially create a more command-like feel and then I start doing space, well, that's for the next session we're gonna do. I'll go ahead and restart it in the future, and we'll start thinking about string play. Basically, a lot of programming is string manipulation, which will be the focus on the next stream. I'm gonna go play Peak, and I'll probably stream it too. So from here forward, the next session, we're gonna learn how to play with strings, how to manipulate them. We kind of have an idea on how to split strings or how to create a two lowercase comparison, taking a string text and making it lowercase. But futuristically, we're going to learn not only how to manipulate strings, but how to use them to our advantage uh, mechanically through the back end. So we can basically type a whole string of things we want it to do. When I say string, I'm basically saying two quotes, right? When you have two quotes around like this is a string. This is also a string. In fact, when I type in a bunch of stuff in here, this is all going to be considered a string. Words, I guess, is the key word. When I say string, I mean words or human speakable language. But from then forward, we'll go into more about string manipulation, how we can use this input to create a more interactive interface where we can now go Google from our workbench. We can YouTube from it. We can search different places. We can basically use this workbench as our kind of like home base. We can add bookmarks if we want to a specific drop-down menu. We're basically customizing an application for our desktop, and we can make it our home page and just use that instead of going to like directly Google or Yahoo, and we can choose what to do based on the keywords we type in here. It's basically what I would consider a online terminal, a online command prompt. You're creating your own personal online command prompt, which will basically learn some things like how to not have to press the button too. Because notice if I press enter, nothing happens. That in itself is a particular listener. There's a keyboard listener that we have to work with in order to activate certain features when we press certain keys, which brings up a lot of diversity when it comes to maybe secret keys that we only know of that'll give us some interesting outputs. Anyway, I'll go ahead and close it there, and we'll go continue maybe tomorrow, but I'm gonna go play some Peak potentially. I don't have that much time. I have a student later. We'll see. I might play Peak for a little bit, check it out, and then play much more later. But I'm out of time for today. Please do like and subscribe if you like the content. If you want to continue on with string manipulation and how we can create our own personal command prompt on our browser, do turn on your notifications, like the stream, and I'll see you next time.